Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever it is that complements where you are in the world. I want to welcome you to another segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time. I am your host, Nikki Roach. And on this platform, those of you who are new to this space, it's your virtual classroom. It is your mentoring moment, not just me sharing information, but I keep getting asked about mentorship and how do I tap into that. So I, after some time, decided, how about I bring in amazing people, influencers, subject matter experts to a space where other people can kind of just listen in and be a fly on the wall, because there's so much greatness, including my guest on today, even more pressing to have it from a Black male's perspective, which is something that we don't hear unless it's something that's tragic. But today you are in for a treat. Again, this platform is, like I said, your virtual classroom, and this guest is no stranger to the classroom, virtual or not. And here we talk about leadership excellence, leadership accidents, and equity. And so we'll tap on all of that. Thank you so much for giving us your ear and also your voice, because I know some of you have mentioned you're talking to the screen or talking to the speaker as we're going along, and amen. And we appreciate that, and we appreciate your time. Want to now shift gears to my guest and introduce you to none other than Dr. Ian Buchanan.
Yep.
Good morning, sir. Good afternoon. Good night, all that, right?
What's going on, Nikki? How are you today? Happy Friday.
I know, it is just so amazing to have crossed your path, even though it's virtual.
Yeah.
But it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, yeah. And I've been moving around a lot. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. The work that I'm doing now, I feel like is good work, and it's work that is most aligned with my mission, my vision, my skill set, my purpose, those kinds of things. So I'm excited to have this conversation with my fam.
Yes, and it's just amazing, like your evolution.
Yep.
Is just absolutely phenomenal. And as I mentioned, I'm excited. People will say, oh, you're excited about all your guests. I am. However, I'm uber excited because, as I've just mentioned, a Black male's perspective.
Yep.
In a positive light that we can learn from. So I'm looking forward to you teaching us on today.
Yeah. Well, you know, like Dr. King said, I'm not a perfect servant. I'm a public servant. And so I think it's important that we, see the full picture of who leaders are, so we don't get this impression that there was just this clear pathway and we didn't have potholes and earthquakes and all kinds of things along the way. So I'm excited again to have this conversation with you today. Yep.
Just to introduce you some and present you to others, a little bit about Dr. Ian Buchanan. He is a native of East St. Louis, Illinois, and currently serves
89 blocks. You already know how we do it.
Oh my God, this is gonna be crazy. Currently he serves as founder and CEO of Nia Education Group, an executive coaching and consulting firm dedicated to helping great leaders become their great leaders themselves. Immediately prior to becoming the edupreneur, which I love this, we'll talk more about that. Yeah. Ian served for 5 years as Chief Academic Officer in the School District of University City, Utah.
U-Time all day. There are so many U-City alum. It is incredible. I love U-City. I love the people of the U. Yeah.
Over the span of nearly 3 decades, Ian has served in a number of roles, including high school mathematics teacher, GED teacher, ACT tutor, college admission officer, National Science Foundation fellow, assistant principal, and Teach for America managing director. He has received numerous awards and recognitions, including the Missouri Association of Secondary School Principal Consummate Professionals of the Year Award, and also the St. Louis Salute to Excellence in Education Award, which we know, those of us in St. Louis, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
Also Teach for America Principal of the Year Award.
Yeah.
Again, not a stranger to the classroom. He is highly rewarded around the country for his passion and commitment to empowering our communities. Ian has been married for more than 2 decades to his wife, Carmen. They have 1 child, Nia, an HBCU alum and elementary teacher in Atlanta, Georgia. So she is following the footsteps. And we're so excited about this first book that's coming out titled Kings.
Oh man, I'm so excited. Whew.
Yes,
Yes.
we have. I mean, it is about to be birthed, and we will be able to put our hands on it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But Dr. Buchanan,
Ian.
Ian,
Yes.
listen, I'm giving respect.
I get it.
Oh my gosh. So let's just jump right in, and
Yep.
we have Nia, and we have the education space. We have your huge involvement. You left off philanthropy because I know you're
absolutely
involved in that.
I really am.
All these things going on. How is it that you're keeping yourself as a Black man in a challenging times that we're in, on level ground?
Yeah. I think, this time, since March 2020, it's shaken all of us. And I think that it's also made us think about what's important to us. And so the pandemic gave me an opportunity to, as the older folks say, to sat down and really think about where my journey is going and what I want to accomplish in this world. And so for me, that required a shift in my professional world, but it also required me to do some deeper connections with the spiritual side of me. And so I've been doing a lot of, probably for the last maybe 8 years, I've been a heavy meditation guy, really, really into meditation and obviously prayer. I have a real strong spiritual background, but I think this commitment to meditation, maintaining calm, listening for the messages, and then also balancing the diet and the physical part has really helped to keep me grounded. I've also really learned how to say no, but I think the main thing is really figuring out what's most important to me, planning for that, and then jumping out on faith and hard work. Okay.
And then, so we talk about your, just evolution of your career and how you've been able to be elevated in these different ways. Do you find that at any point of past that you've made a decision to where you're like, maybe I moved too fast?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So when I left St. Louis for a couple of years, I think I left in 2014, and I took it to take a job in Memphis at the Achievement School District. And so my job with the Achievement, and so this is in Memphis, and this is what they call in the education world, a portfolio school district. And so that's a whole different model of school district. So anyway, I got hired, and at the first, my job was to basically let schools know, hey, Vashon, hey, Sumner, hey, Soldan, your kids have not been meeting the mark. We're coming in and we're going to take your school, we're going to make it a charter, and we're going to get rid of all of your staff. So my job was to go into these beloved Memphis communities who love their schools and say, hey, I'm taking your school. And so it's part of my job. And so the first meeting that I had with a group of Memphians, I got booed like 8 times. Like it was so, yes, publicly. This was a public speech. So I got booed at least 8 times. And so I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. And so when I went into the meeting, I saw the Noops all, they had on their paraphernalia and everything. And I walked into the meeting and say, Noops, what's up? I'm here. I'm new from St. Louis. What are y'all here for? They said, we're here to protest you. And so eventually I started to realize that, hey, this might not have been the role for me. It wasn't a good alignment with my values, with how I respect the community. I felt like we were doing to the community as opposed to doing with the community. And so it wasn't the wisest choice. And so anybody that knows me, they know that I don't really stay in jobs for a long time. So I quit after a year. I actually walked away from the role, and it was the highest paying role that I've ever had, probably the most visible role. And I just walked away because it didn't align with who I was as a human being and my commitment to my people. So yeah, I walked away.
What? Okay, I wasn't expecting that because there's so many. Let's chop this up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you, thank you.
Yep.
For choosing such a situation, a real scenario. And I say that because one, Black man.
Yep.
You see you all as strong, you're gonna fight through, you're gonna push through, but I'm hearing you say there comes a time when you have to step back.
Oh yeah.
And as you said, does this even align with, and you said we were doing 2 and not 4. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
And
2 and not with, not 4, but with, because we don't do for people. We work with the people. If you do for, that kind of implies that the people are a charity case. Our people are not a charity case. We work alongside our people. We are our people. And so, and I'm not going to do anything that is done to us. I'm going to work with us. So
I love that phrase. But the nerve of you to leave your highest paying, high profile, and you packed up from what you knew.
Exactly.
To go somewhere where you weren't known and starting to build or having the need to build those relationships.
Yep.
What did you tap into to even say, okay, I have to get out of here? Because most times people will say, oh, you gave up, we knew it, blah, blah, blah. So you deal with all that before you even make the decision.
Yeah. I think a lot of times educators, I read this phrase the other day and it says salary is a drug. And so I think that,
you said that.
Yeah. And so I think sometimes we get caught up in the money and we're so addicted to the money and the things that it can give us, that money can give us and get for us. And I understand that we stay in jobs that we absolutely hate. And we do things that we absolutely hate. And so for me, I've always been one to follow my passion, work very hard, but then also lean very strongly on my faith. And so as things would happen, when I left another organization, I walked right into another. So when I left that particular school district, I ran right into another job. So, and that's really been the story. But anybody that knows me, they know that I don't really stay around in a job too long. The longest I've actually worked in any role is 5 years.
What's behind that?
I think that I'm pretty good at helping institutions stabilize and really start to thrive.
Gotcha.
And I'm also pretty good at working. I'm really good at being a number 2. And so I'm really good at helping the top dog really be the top dog and trying to block and be the person who is the supporter and be the person who you can count on. And so once I feel like I fulfill my mission, then it's time for another mission.
And so you said something very profound just now, which takes nerves and confidence in who you are and what you bring. You just say you are great at a number 2.
Oh yeah.
Some people would say, no, I need to be the one that's up front, the one that's seen, the one that's heard. That takes humility, but that also takes honesty with self.
Yeah, I think you have to know your role. And like I tell people all the time, it's about the mission and not the position. So I don't really care what role I'm in. All I really want to do is stay focused on my personal mission. And I'm crystal clear about why I'm here. I'm crystal clear about what I'm supposed to do. And I get signs that let me know, bro, you're on the right track. Keep moving. You're on the right track. Just keep moving. And so, but then also, Martin Luther King talks about this concept of the drum major instinct. And he says, everybody wants to be important. Everybody wants to be in front. Everybody wants to be that FAMU drum major. Yeah. But what he talks about really is being a drum major for justice. So don't be pumping yourself up for yourself, be a drum major for the work. And so as long as I'm a drum major for the work, I don't have to be in front. And then I guess the last thing that I will say is the person who I idolize the most outside of King, who I've never met, of course, the people that my family and my colleagues, but Bayard Rustin. And most people do not know who Bayard Rustin is. Exactly. So Bayard Rustin came about in the probably early 50s, but he was Martin Luther King's number 2. And at one time, he was considered the most brilliant strategist in the world. And so you have this Black man who is the most brainy, most thoughtful, most strategic person behind some of the biggest movements in the world. And so that's who I want to be. I don't have to be King. I want to be Bayard Rustin, because the strategy matters and the work matters. But the reason that we don't know about Bayard Rustin, who was probably one of the most impactful Black men in our world, is because in the 50s, he was an openly gay Black man who was dating white men. So he was not getting any love. And so, but my point is not about his personal lifestyle. My point is about the work that he does, and the importance of a number 2 is the point that I'm making.
And I love, because that I was like, we've had a chance to cross paths many years ago in a space that was bringing African-American educators, K through 12, and also post-secondary together to bring some unity, but also the network, the community, to understand that there were opportunities that were available, but we didn't know about those things. So that's how we met. Was it Slava?
Slava. Yeah, Slava. Yeah, Slava. I remember, a good old Slava.
Yeah, those amazing times. It was like, oh my gosh, here's a whole community of individuals that I had no knowledge of, because and then by me being on the higher ed side, at that time I was still kind of navigating my way through that whole system of higher ed. And many of us in that group, were new to getting doctorates, and just understanding I think the value that we bring that as a collective was just amazing. But it took, even in that space, a group of leaders to rally us all together and keep us focused. And you were one of those individuals that, like, okay, look, this is why we're not just coming to hang out and have light bites and some spirit.
Yeah, I think it's so important for leaders to really understand their role and not really focus on the position. I think too many times people say, I want to be a principal, I want to be a superintendent, I want to be X, and they want to be Z, but they haven't really focused on the impact that they want to make. And I think once you focus on the impact, then, because sometimes ego can start to take us over, especially my brothers. And so if we focus on the mission and our purpose versus our position, then I think it makes the work a lot easier. And I think the collective moves forward quicker. And so that's really my perspective. At the same time, I grew up in East St. And East St. is a very highly competitive community. I'm a longtime athlete. And so, we want to win. And we also going to talk a little bit of trash. And so that's part of what drives me. So I might talk a little bit of trash, but at the same time, I do understand where my power comes from.
Yeah. Tell us, it's obvious. Anyone who's around you for any few minutes will understand your commitment and passion, your intentionality around how you serve and where you serve. How did you even stumble into this space of education?
Intentionality, that's such a good word. So the way that I stumbled into it was really, really crazy. So I was probably a junior at Mizzou. And I was in the Mizzou's engineering program. And so I met a gentleman by the name of Dr. Sundiata Chajua. And he gave me a book called Black Awakening in Capitalist America. And so what this book really was about was how in the late 60s, early 70s, kind of like we see today, Black folks was tearing this country up. And so the powers that be said, you know what? These Negroes burning our cities up, doing all of this. We need to try to calm this down. So let's give these Negroes some jobs and calm them down. And so that's when you saw programs like Inroads, and you saw some of these other scholarship programs start to take place in the 80s, because it was a reaction to the unrest. And so once I figured out I'm being geared towards engineering because they really don't want me to be a power broker to make an impact. They just want me to be a cog in the wheel. I was like, okay. So then as part of that, at the same time, my fraternity got involved in a tutoring experience with Columbia Public Schools. And so while I was reading this, at this time I was I'm talking about fight the power Black, that type, plus I'm raised in the Nation of Islam. So I have that kind of energy. And so once that book, plus then I got a chance to tutor 4 Black middle school boys.
Change your life.
Changed my life. So then I fast forward, I taught pre-algebra through calculus at McClure High School. And then I became a principal for a little bit over a decade. And then I just did a couple other things. But yeah, so that's how I got started. It was just a confluence of a book that I read. Then it was an opportunity for my fraternity to take on a community service project. And then, you know what? I just said, I'm going right to grad school. And I graduated in May from Mizzou, started grad school in June, and the rest is history.
So it's so interesting because there's it's very prominent how many guests of past that I've had that will say something very similar. I was giving up my time, I was volunteering, and something made my heart beat.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or something pulled at my heart, or I couldn't go to sleep after I finished.
Yep.
How important do you think, which I know you know is important, but the whole idea of serving beyond yourself and beyond your needs impacts the work and the decisions where you may even land?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because, sometimes people try to dog out communities like North City, East St. Louis, Wellston, those types of places, but there's a whole lot of capital in those communities. There's this, we believe you can do it kind of thing that the community gives you. There's this love and appreciation and push that these kind of communities give you. And I think my background, honestly, and all of the things that you can't really, so I'll just tell you like this. So I had 4 Black male math teachers. Can you name anybody else that can say they have 4 Black male math teachers? I had 3 Black male, exactly. I've had 3 Black male principals when I was growing up. And so they already laid the blueprint for me. All I had to do was Ian Buchanan it, make it my own. And the script was already set. I just had to follow the footsteps. So those kinds of things created an environment for me to believe what was possible.
Right. And being mindful that some people still challenge, well, what's the big deal about representation and having individuals of color in certain roles, and not just those in service roles, hospitality roles, custodial roles, since we're talking about education. But no, they need to be on all levels. And truly, like what you just said, validates that in a whole different way in regards to, like, you saw it, I can be it. And a lot of times when we don't see it, which is often, and it continues when you get to higher ed, unless you're in an HBCU, still, there's this absence that and even all these years later, because you've had an extensive time in education, we're still dealing with the same things. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, we are still dealing with the same things. Kanye said racism's still alive. They just be concealing it. And so I think it'll never go. I think it'll never go away. And then I also read this thing that said, racism is not the shark, it's the water. And so everything that we do, we still are in this environment, this smog of racism. And so until that goes away, then we'll still have some of the same challenges. I do think that what racism does partly is cause any community to turn on itself.
Yeah.
And so this horizontal violence that we see, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's psychological, we can't take all of the blame for that. That was the way that we've been conditioned. And so it continues to go. And so I understand my role at this point as an older gentleman is in the game right now. So I know that part of my job is to make sure that the next generation can take the baton and roll. So I do take that part of my role very seriously.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because oftentimes we get frustrated, like aggravated, irritated.
Oh, yeah.
And we can wipe our hands and say, you know what, forget it. Not knowing, though, as you just said, like, my contribution matters. My work matters, because it pushes us a little more. And even like you had a chance to mentor those 4 young guys. I'm sure those 4 young guys, just as you're speaking of them, they're speaking of you.
Yeah.
To cause them to be exposed to something different.
Yeah.
So that is amazing.
I do think it's important for people to see something, so it can be, they can have some aspiration. But I also think it's important for people to understand that they don't need to be a carbon copy. And I also think it's important for the mentor to listen just as much as they advise, counsel, preach, recommend, because we don't know the world of these young people. And so we can't assume that we do, just like they don't know our world. And so I think part of times we are so, I got something to say, I got to tell them something, I'm gonna preach to them. They don't want to hear that mess. First of all, they want to hear you make contact and make a relationship, and it can't be preachy. That's why I really say the role of coaches and band teachers and all of those kinds of extracurricular people are important, because they can get kids to do things that they would normally do, and they can inspire and motivate and build character and build discipline and build interest in ways that you can't do in a traditional classroom.
That's true. That is so true. Which goes to speak of how important those extracurricular options are, even though they're starting to disappear even more and more. Just when you thought, like, okay, they can't strip this, like even a home ec, but that was but it was a benefit not only for, I know for me as a student, when I took that class, it was just not about the projects, but it was just about discovering what my interests were and how to show up.
Yeah. And I think also it makes you a fuller human being as well. Because the more things you know and the more things you're aware of and the more competencies you have, it makes you a fuller human being.
Agree. Now you have had some barriers.
Oh, man.
Share one thing that as a Black educator, Black male educator, something that you wish you had earlier in your career that would have helped you along the way?
Yeah. I think in some ways I was pretty lucky, because I started my career in Ferguson Florissant School District. And at that time, so in terms professionally, there were a lot of role models. You had Vernon Mitchell Sr., rest in peace. And you had really this whole team over at Berkeley High School at the time. And then I also had mentors at McClure High School. So I had all of these kind of models and hold on, I want to make sure I get the question. Repeat the question for me, Nikki.
No, just in regards to what do you wish you had earlier?
Yeah, okay, cool. So so I did have them as mentors, but I think one of the things that I really wish is I had somebody saying, Ian, there are multiple paths in education. You don't necessarily have to be a principal. You don't necessarily have to be a superintendent. There are multiple paths that you can go into and still feel fulfilled and still be financially independent. So I think sometimes we just feel like we only know a few narrow paths. I think that's one thing. I also wish that I had somebody that I could just pick up the phone and call and say, like at any time almost, to say, hey, I'm having this challenge as a principal, as a teacher. I wish you could help me. There were so many times in my journey that I just felt like I was on an island.
Yeah.
And so
was that more prominent as you moved up?
Oh man. So my last role in U City as chief academic officer, this will speak to your question. So I went to a chief academic officer conference in Atlanta Black Atlanta, and there were about 70, 80 people, 80 chief academic officers there.
Okay.
3 Black men. And so you talk about when you go to different spaces, do you feel more lonely? Absolutely. And especially in education, there are not that many Black men, especially in traditional school districts, that occupy the chief academic officer seat, the curriculum and instruction seat. They might occupy the human resources seat. They might occupy the operations seat. They might occupy the student services seat. They might occupy sometimes chief financial officer. But when it comes to the person who is responsible for the teaching and learning in a district, it's not that many brothers in that space. And so I want to be one of the people who is pulling brothers to say, hey, get in this space. Come on, it's room for all of us. And I also want people to be like, hey, Ian did that. I know I can do it too.
So hence that leads you, even though you had already launched Nia,
Yep.
all, some of this movement in your personal career.
Yep.
What made you go? Well, actually, I don't even need to say what made you go into down that route,
Mm-hmm.
because you just said it about being able to develop the men.
Yep.
Applauding you for making that move and taking on that responsibility and commitment, because when I also began to progress within the higher ed space, I totally understand that sense of loneliness.
Yep.
And I know I did have to learn how, it's like, oh, I don't feel included. I don't feel a sense of belonging. There was part of it that I had to own because I wasn't showing up fully.
Yep.
So I began to lean in, but there is a whole different type of level or another side of this, that feeling when you are in a room of 50 plus and you're it.
Yep. And so I agree with that 100%. And so that's part of why I decided to become a professional certified coach. And I do want to emphasize certified, because sometimes people devalue coaching.
Yeah.
I've gone through, over the last 13 months, I've probably done 200 hours of training and about 150, 170 hours of actual coaching. So it is a certified technical profession. But the reason that I got into coaching was because I was in a situation just like you. This is when I was in Memphis. So I really, really started to struggle. It started to impact my psyche.
Yeah, it does.
And so I didn't show up in spaces the way, and I remember my boss, who was a sister, telling me, hey, bro, you got 30 days. If you don't get this right, we are going to cut you. We got to let you go. And so.
You can show up and do the job.
Exactly right.
But all those other forces are real.
Yep. And so in coaching, we call those saboteurs.
Okay.
And saboteur is a psychological reaction to perceived hurt, harm, or danger. And that hurt, harm, or danger can be either physical or psychological. And so when we feel like we go into spaces where we're going to feel like we are less than, we're inferior, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, how are people going to take us? Am I using the right diction? Is my hair right? Is my outfit right? Then what that does is that impacts our ability to lead and to show up. And so in coaching, I help people confront that and challenge themselves, and also challenge the assumptions, the beliefs, the mindsets, and the behaviors that actually limit them from being their full selves, personally and professionally. And so this past year, I was fortunate enough to coach 11 Black men in the St. Louis region. And so we worked together from the beginning of the school year pretty much until the end, spending an average of about an hour and a half with each of them over the course of 10 or 11 months. And so that's the work that I'm most passionate about. And it's a space where more of us need to be, because everybody needs a coach.
And why do you say that?
Well, because a coach does a couple of things. First, a coach helps you see yourself more clearly in the mirror. It helps you see that you may not, but I'll just speak for myself. So maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I walked past the mirror, and when I walked past, I was like, woo, that midsection is not the the 22-year-old midsection.
Or the 2020, right?
Exactly right. Exactly. And so I'm like, hold on for a second. I need to see myself more clearly.
Yeah.
Sometimes, we've been having all of these floods, and sometimes people, when you get in mud, you try to hit the gas and your tires just spin.
Yeah.
We help you for you to get unstuck. If you're spinning, we help you to get unstuck. If you got your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time, meaning I want to lose weight, but I love these ding dongs, or I love these Twinkies, or people don't eat that stuff no more. But anyway, but you're trying to lose weight, but you're snacking at 10 o'clock. You got your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. And so we help you figure all of that out. Most importantly, we help you reach the goals that you're trying to reach. And so for me in my practice, I tell people I focus on the goal that is what you're trying to reach, the gold that is the top tier that you can, so excellence, and then the soul. Because if your soul, if your spirit, if your resonance is not right, not in a religious way, but having a real clear picture of who you are, your why, your purpose, your strengths. If I don't address that part, then you're not going to make sustainable change.
And sustainable is the word, because most of us are looking for a quick fix.
Exactly right.
And pop it in the microwave, give me 30 seconds.
Yep, exactly.
It doesn't, right. And I love that your focus, while you're open to all, but this focus on Black men, because they're not trying to be told what to do.
Right.
I'm good, I'll figure it out.
Yep.
And because we do it even as women of color,
Yep.
African-American women, like we are strong, we show up knowing we have to do double. That's just how it is. And that's a mindset, like we have been socialized to even show up. I don't care how small or large it is, but also what I have learned is having that, whether it's a peer, whether it's the coach, whether it's a colleague, accountability.
Yep. Yeah.
I have learned is something that we don't talk about enough.
I think accountability is something we don't talk about enough. I also think that giving ourselves grace is something that we don't talk about enough. Because so I do coach several African-American women, including a couple of CEOs, superintendents, and most of our stuff is really around the assumptions, the behaviors, the beliefs that we don't really challenge and we don't question.
Because we're happy to be there. We're happy to be there, but we're also nervous. We have this nervousness because it's like, okay, if I don't do this, and the way that we think but no one's ever said that. So we begin to develop these parameters. And who said those were the parameters? But then that just begins to chisel away our greatness. And as you said earlier, we don't show up properly.
Yep. And I experienced that. And I was fortunate enough to have a dynamic coach to kind of help me get through some of that. And again, that's what compelled me to want to be a coach. Wow. Yeah, that's what helped me to really want to be a coach. Yeah.
And then from that coaching, now author, which is, I want to say about time. And I do say about. About time. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about King.
Yeah. So King really came about. I had been thinking about it for a while, but it really came out. I was at a meeting of a group called Black Male Educators, STL, led by Howard Fields, Dr. Howard Fields, and Dr. Diggs.
Okay.
So they invited me to this meeting, kind of like a social happy hour. So I walk in and it's about 30, 40 people there. And I talk about this in the book. When I walked in, I realized that, dude, you are now the old head. What happened? Yeah, I walked in and I was like, oh my God, I remember when I was the young gun, now I'm the old head. And so while I was in this meeting, just engaging with this group of younger educators, it's on my age too, I said, man, like Nia says, all I need is one mic. So I was like, if I just had one mic, what is it that I would say to them? What is it that I would actually say? And so King, know the king within. First, know who you are, know your strengths, know your gifts, know your self-saboteurs, know your values, know your life purpose, know your mission. I, inspire others for collective impact. It's okay to inspire people, but let's do it for the bigger good. And let me help you learn how to do that. Then the next thing is N, which means navigate to the north. Have a North Star, have a why, have a motivation, have a Mount Rushmore, have people who inspire you, whether it's your grandmother, whether it's you want to just make a big impact in the world, whether it's you, whatever it is, but have a North Star, a why, a purpose. And then G is gravitate to the great. So surround yourself around people, this whole notion of iron sharpens iron. Surround yourself around people who can sharpen you, who you can sharpen, who will give you encouragement, who will give you that kick in the butt, who will keep you accountable. So surround yourself by people who are great. And so that's really the 4-part leadership approach that I take, but it's really designed to say, if I could talk to brothers based on my experiences and my training and my who I am, what might I say? And that's what the book is about.
And even though it's for the king, I know as I was prepping for our time together, I'm like, okay, do we get a queen?
Yeah, right.
Because, but at the same time, all of those, K, the I, the N, the G, even for myself.
Oh yeah.
As a Black female, very much a way to get centered.
Absolutely right.
Founded to even build, because a lot of us are building, but we don't have a solid foundation, and it's crumbling. And we wonder why we're constantly bouncing or constantly trying to do this patchwork, along the way. And it's because I love, even when you said earlier about knowing, you know where your strength lies, you know what you're good at. And even you saying, I know, oftentimes, especially for us as individuals of color, that is arrogant. Is how we downplay it, but it's not about being arrogant. It's about knowing your position, knowing your worth. Does anybody else get dinged for that? Not who. You answer that question, but it's not about showing up and sounding the alarm, because my thing is you have receipts.
Yeah, right, exactly, right.
You don't need to come around and, hey, I am, hey. No, you just show up and the atmosphere changes. We know something's going to go down.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's this really hard thing to navigate. I call it a continuum, this confidence, cockiness continuum, So where is cockiness and where is just confidence? Yep. And, part of what I do in coaching is I help people tap into that real cocky side, that really, and we call it
and being comfortable with it though.
We call it the king within. So I help you really tap into your king within. I was listening to oh my God, I forgot the sister's name, but she used to be on NBC News. She has her own show.
Not Joy Reid.
No. She used to be on Today Show. She was on the Today Show. It'll come to us. Okay. She has a daytime talk show. It'll come to us. Tamron Hall, yes. So Tamron Hall was talking about, sometimes when she goes into these spaces, she says she listens to a lot of rap music, specifically 50 Cent, when she goes in, because she needs that type of confidence, that type of, to walk into the space, and so it's nothing. That's why we idolize many hip hop artists, because they talk they ish, and that's why we, admire Ali. I know I got Ali everywhere. That's why we admire Ali everywhere I go in my room, in my spaces, Ali, because we recognize the confidence, the swagger, but also being able to back it up. And so if we can do both of those, then we good.
And I love how you have been very specific about living and living legends, as well as those who are at rest. How you have surrounded yourself around individuals that gives you almost a shining light to this North Star that you're challenging us to find. And that's a lesson I don't want any of us to miss, that I'm hearing from you, and staying connected with those. And connection can come in many different ways. I have to invite you back to kind of unpack that, but I don't want us to miss that because that is critical. A lot of times I deal with individuals who are wanting, a mentor. I need a mentor. I need a mentor, but they've not taken the time to do the pre-work and then also what are the expectations that are out there. But I always say, give a person a reason to want to tap into you. And I think what you've provided us today are strategies and keys and steps to first get ourselves together so that someone, you can coach them along the way, but there's some things we need to come with for you to work with, right?
And what I always say is that there's some things you already have. My job is to just bring them out. Yeah, you already got it inside you. You may not have the confidence to know. And some of the stuff that you may not have inside of you, we can teach you. We can teach you skills. That's nothing. We can't teach you a way of being because you can have all the skills in the world and be a butthole. So,
That's real.
Yeah.
So what next? We have the book coming out. People can grab their hands and we kind of summarize a little bit of it, but the details. And then for me, I love still being able to go through and underline stuff.
Yes.
And then for me, I'm a post-it person all over the house and the office. So being able to pull some of these quotes, like I have literally wrote down several of them that you dropped on us today.
You know what? It's so funny. Somebody said, somebody told me it's like, dude, you like a young Jesse Jackson. Because Jesse Jackson always likes them little rhymes. But one of the things that I've learned in communication is that you have to have things that are sticky, that can stick to people. And so anytime you can do things like alliterations or provide metaphors or those kinds of things, it helps to stick.
And I totally agree with you in regards to like the visualization or allowing people to put their hands in it, to step into it, to imagine it themselves. Then it does stick, and it also helps them with the shift that may be needed.
Just one little side note on that, just as a coaching note, in your brain, visualizing something can give you the same like impact or feeling as if you were actually there. So sometimes if you want to try to develop more creativity or think about something, sometimes if you put yourself exactly in that space and do the visualization, it's off, your brain almost treats it just like you were actually physically there. So visualization is so, so, so important.
Yeah. And the whole idea of writing it out.
All of that.
What's the feeling? What's the fear? Because I know for me, it's not always, it's all, was just with a group this past weekend. And what's interesting is that I'm like, it's not me and the capabilities that I have. It's just me getting past, as you mentioned that word earlier, the sabotagers.
Saboteur.
That, and we think, okay, I've handled it, I've got through it, I've gotten over it. But if you're constantly evolving, constantly blooming, which we should be doing,
absolutely,
and it can be in the smallest way, we are growing, we're changing, and a lot of times we're trying to nurture still that person who we were.
Agree.
We're a different being now, and with that, I need to come back to Dr. Buchanan to explore. So it's like, don't ever think you make it somewhere and don't need these resources or these help, this community around you. It's constant, because the more you show up at the next job, then in the next community, you show up to do some other work in another country, guess what? You show up a little different, but then there's other tools that you tap into within. And guess what? I need to make an appointment.
Preaching now. You preaching, sis. You preaching.
It's true though, because I think we get stuck in like, let me make this appointment, or let me do this series of sessions with the coach, with the counselor, and then I'm good.
No, my goal is not to coach you towards a goal. My goal is to coach you towards transformation. With my coaching framework, it's a 4-part framework, and one of our principles is evoke transformation. And so we're not just trying to help you get a job. We're not just trying to help you lose weight. We're not just trying to help you realize that you can talk in front of people with confidence who don't look like you. We're trying to get you to actually physically, mentally transform. Not physically, but mentally transform.
In some instances, physically.
Yeah. However you define it is really what it is.
Yeah. Now, where can people learn more about you, Nia Group, King, all that?
Yeah. So the thing about the book is that this has really been a challenge. And so I thought that I actually had my final copy, that I was going to hit the button. And so when the physical copy actually came to me, I realized there are a couple edits that I still need to do. It looks different when you actually have the physical copy. So the physical copy will get a couple more edits. So the book will be out, I would say, in about a month from now. About a month it'll be available, and I'll have a book signing coming up as well. So I'm excited about that. That's one of the things that's coming up.
And all the information to us.
Yeah. And so in terms of how it can be reached, I am on Twitter. I think it's Ian Buchanan. Same thing with Facebook and LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and what's the other?
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Ian Buchanan as well.
And then the website?
Yes, the website is Nia Education Group.org. So www.niaeducationgroup.org. And I am N-I-A. And so Nia is a key Swahili word for purpose. And we are a purpose-driven organization that, we're designed to help great leaders become their greatest selves. And so that is our purpose.
You have the platform to communicate one message to leaders all over the world, something to help them in the nick of time. What's your one message?
I think that as leaders, sometimes we get so caught up in the doing part of the work, the checklist, the strategic planning, the goals, the objectives, the technical aspects of the job. So the doing, that we forget that we're called human beings. We're not called human doings, we're called human beings. And so we have to really be thoughtful about who we be, that is who we are, what our strengths are, what our morals are, what our values are, and that needs to guide what we do professionally. And so when you put the doing with the being, then you become a whole person. And so in my work, I try to couple those. And then I also try to make sure that this Japanese concept called ikigai, which is, it really means your life purpose. And so it is about, what are you good at? What do you love? What's going to make you money? And what's going to impact the world? And so if you can think about those 4 questions, it will help you get clearer about your life purpose or your life passion. For example, I might have a job where the money is good, it's aligned to my skill set, but I may not love it. I may hate getting up and going to work every day. So when you think about trying to find your life purpose and aligning your profession to your mission, there's some things you really need to think about. And don't be afraid to jump and do something else.
That's a whole nother segment.
It really is. I mean, it's a conversation.
Because we are too comfortable.
Yeah.
When you do it once, it's contagious.
Yeah. And I will say, for me, I believe in work and faith. And anybody knows me, Drake has this song, he says, Drake, they say nobody works harder than you. I laugh it off, but it's probably true. And that's really my philosophy too. That's my, so you just have to really have this work ethic along with a belief.
Wow. This has been absolutely amazing. Nothing short than what I would, and I knew we wouldn't have enough time. Promise me you'll come back.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to come back, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about my book when it comes out.
Yes, I welcome it. And again, don't forget to send us all of the information so that we can continue to support you as you move beyond even this region, this country even.
Can I give you your flowers real quick, please? Come on, take them, receive them. I just want to say to you, Nikki, I just respect and appreciate, first of all, you cold at what you do. That's the number one thing. You are so good. And I do think that it aligns with who you are as a person and your personal mission. I can tell that you are in your zone. And so I just want to give you kudos, because the work that you do is like a concentric circle. It just goes out and out and out, and it impacts more people. And so I just want to encourage you to just keep doing what you're doing, because I know that we all have these.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you make a difference. And so I just want you to know.
You. I mean, some makeup.
But no, you're a boss. You're a boss.
And I'm learning to just say thank you. Because usually I won't say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I probably need to make an appointment, right?
You know, we have to do a better job of receiving praise.
That is a tough part. But I thank you.
Yes.
You're coaching me right here in the moment.
Awesome.
Dr. Buchanan, thank you so much for joining us. All of our listeners, thank you so much for giving us your ear, giving us your minds. Now we've given you something to place in your hand. You now have tools to go and take yourself, take your thing, take your passion, take your love to the next level. Also wanting to remind you that you already have everything you need to be successful. That's success as you define it.
Facts.
So just tap into it, move forward with it, and you can conquer the world. I want to thank Sparkman Pathway to Careers and Sparkman Publications, also KSTL 690 AM and Covenant Exchange for your continued support of this platform. I want to thank each of you. Once again, you could be doing anything at any time, but you're here with us. So thank you. And until next time, go